Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Matt Barre. I'm from SlantRange here in San Diego. Appreciate you guys all taking the time to come and listen. We've delivered solutions, these aerial phenotyping solutions to research and breeding customers for several years now, and coming up on multiple millions of plots analyzed. We're really amazed to see the level of interest and the rate of adoption. We've learned a lot along the way, going out and doing what has been done and what works and what doesn't work, really applying some unique technology applications. So we're excited to share that with you today. A little bit about us and SlantRange. Our core team has been working together for over 25 years developing remote sensing and analytics solutions. A lot of that time has been in the earth sciences and defense and intelligence applications. And over the last about 7 years, we've been focused on agriculture here at SlantRange. So while remote sensing is comparatively new to agriculture, the techniques have been in use for decades, and the costs have really come down to the point where it's now feasible to put this to daily use within agriculture. However, agriculture, of course, is incredibly diverse, and we've been focused on those applications within ag, where low altitude remote sensing can really deliver the most immediate value, specifically within research and breeding, which is what we want to talk about today. So our core client base is really dominated by major input suppliers, specifically seed, crop protection, crop nutrition across a variety of crops. And they really depend on us to deliver these key performance indicators on their trials. We also have a series of technology partners that really improve the depth of our offering. We have a partnership with Microsoft that allows you to deploy these solutions within Azure. We have some partnerships with DJI with its integrations into the most popular drones. And we also have a very strong patent base. So we now have 9 patents issued on a lot of the core technology that really enables some of these applications. So customers are really expanding their use of our tools. So you can see here the growth in the number of countries and locations and number of plots we analyzed. We're coming up on probably 2.5 million plots analyzed. So very scalable platform, and again, lots of growth in the space. So if you're in this session, you know that farm productivity gains over the past few decades have really been driven heavily by improvements to input performance. And that comes from R&D investments by these input suppliers. But the ability to measure those inputs is really becoming a bit limited. And that's primarily limited by traits that are either maybe not observable by people, and also subjectivity and errors in the measurement of those traits. So there's really a need for more relevant and accurate information that can really match up with those developments that have been done, on the input side and the genetic side. So that's what aerial phenotyping really offers. And again, it's at a cost that's lower than what's been traditionally done. So, what that means for you really is faster R&D cycles, more confidence in your advancement decisions, more accurately target inputs, and that's really what we're talking about today. So we want to talk a bit about the information value that really comes from this type of measurement technology. And this is really a fundamental piece to understand. It's a bit technical, but it's worth understanding here. So what we're showing here is fundamentally with these systems, we're measuring how sunlight interacts with the plant canopy. So that sunlight comes down, interacts with the plant. Some of that light is absorbed and some is reflected, and the reflected light is what we measure in our sensor. So what's shown on the left here is the spectral content, I should say, of the sunlight at, say, noon on a given day. And on the right-hand side in the dark blue curve is what we measure in the sensor, that reflected light from the canopy. However, what's shown in the light blue is the solar spectral signature at 4 o'clock on that same day. And if you look over on the right, you can see that light blue curve is what we measure in the sensor. And if you haven't accounted for that difference, that change in the sunlight condition, that can look like, say, a stress condition in the plant or some other conditions. So you really have to account for that difference. And that's really done by a component that we put on top of the aircraft that measures those solar conditions as we're flying. So for every image that we take of the ground, we're taking a corresponding measurement to the sunlight conditions, and that allows us to really calibrate these measurements and put them all on a common scale. And what that really means for you is, say, if you create a map of one of your trials on 1 week, so you fly it again 2 weeks later and things look different, well, is that because the condition of the crop has changed, or is that because the sunlight has changed, there's more clouds, there's less clouds? And that's what this component on top of the drone does. So it allows you to measure those things on a calibrated scale, and more importantly, it allows you to compare those traits over time. So you can look at how those trends are developing how those inputs might be changing over time. So it's really an important piece of the puzzle that really brings, some high value information to our platform. And it's an important component to understand. We have, quite a bit of IP wrapped around how to do this from the Airborne platform. And it's really an important piece of our solution. So speaking a little bit about spatial resolution as well, I mentioned you can get very high spatial resolution from these airborne systems. And when you combine that spatial resolution with this high spectral resolution that we just talked about, it really allows you to do some unique things that you just can't really do from other platforms. And it really enables you to segment the crops that you care about and pull out those differences from the background and provide much more accurate measurements and really support some of these more advanced analytics that we provide. So what's shown here on the right is a single image, and the first step here that I just showed is that we're using that spectral information to filter out the background and just focus on any vegetation in the image. The next step is to use that spectral information, so to look at the different colors and spectral responses of that vegetation and separate the crop that you care about from, in this case, which is a variety of weeds in the field. So we can filter those out as well. And then we focus the analytics simply on that detected crop. And in this case, we're showing a chlorophyll index. We've got a whole host of other metrics that we can apply, but all really take advantage of that same approach where we use that very high spatial resolution combined with the spectral resolution to really do some high resolution segmentation and provide some very specific data products. The other thing we do quite differently that's worth talking about here is the way that we generate this imagery. So anybody that may have done this before is probably familiar with this concept of orthomosaicing. So you collect a bunch of images from the drone, and typically the process is to stitch them all together into a map and then divide that map up into pieces and run the analytics. We've sort of flipped that architecture on its head, and here's the reason why. So if you zoom in on one of these orthomosaics, and I suggest you do this if you've ever collected an orthomosaic, but if you zoom in, you can see there's actually quite a few artifacts that are introduced through that stitching process. So you can see, I've highlighted some in orange here, but some artifacts along where two images come together. You see some odd circles there inserted, and all that is done to kind of make the orthomosaic look good, but it can completely, kind of confound the analytics. So again, we've kind of flipped that process on its head. So rather than collecting those images, calibrating these images, stitching them into a map, and then carving up the map to predict the statistics, we collect the images, conduct the analytics directly on the single images. So we've got that native resolution that we talked about, generate those statistics, and then we aggregate those statistics into maps, or in this case, individual plots. So you can see here, we've kind of inverted those last two steps, and it's really a key component in achieving the level of accuracy that we can achieve. So you can imagine trying to say count plants on the image here. Those artifacts can really, again, kind of confound those measurements. So speaking a little bit about, kind of the geolocation accuracy that's required specifically for test plot work. So when you run through that process I just showed you, you of course want to make sure that you're assigning the right traits and analytics to each individual plot. So the generation of those plot boundaries is a critical piece. And again, anyone who's done this can understand this can be quite complicated. It can sometimes be easy, for a nice simple trial like this with nice clean alleys and a big kind of standard grid spacing. But we've also got trials like this, where you want to find the individual plots within this, mature corn trials. So we've introduced a lot of very specific components that provide very accurate geolocation so that we can accurately place those images exactly where they belong and assign them to the right plots. So you can see here on the right, we've generated plot boundaries here. These are 4-row plots where we're generating analytics on the center 2 and also the outer 2 rows of that 4-row plot. So some complex geometry that can really be supported by this high accuracy geolocation information that we include in our systems. So very critical piece. We do include RTK GPS. We've got high precision, what's called IMU, so roll, pitch, and yaw data. And all of that is rolled up into a system that can very accurately place those images. And again, make sure you're assigning the right traits to the right plots. So I want to talk a little bit kind of about the end-to-end workflow. Again, this is a very scalable platform. We put a lot of work into this to really make it flexible and efficient. It begins on the left here with defining those plot boundaries like we just talked about, planning those data collections, and then of course you collect that data. You can collect that data yourself using our sensors or a variety of third-party sensors that we now support, or we can provide that service for you and send pilots out to collect the data for you. We have some in-field tools that quickly check the quality of that imagery while you're in the field without an internet connection, so you can verify that you got good quality data before you leave the field. If you see any anomalies in the data, you can put the drone up again and collect the data. And then the data gets uploaded to us in the cloud. We run through those calibration and pre-processing steps that we talked about. You can take that imagery out of the platform. For those of you that kind of want to get into some of those analytics tools on your own, you can take the imagery out and process it yourself, or you can continue on with our platform where we can run a variety of those algorithms, extract those statistics. We can even run third-party algorithms. So if you have algorithms you've developed, we can insert those into the workflow and process those as well. And then, of course, like we said, those algorithms and statistics are applied to each individual plot using that high accuracy geolocation data. Once that workflow has been completed, we've got a variety of visualization tools, which I'll show you. And then we also support a variety of export tools. So you can get access to the imagery, the orthomosaics, but also tabular exports of the traits that are extracted through each plot. So there are kind of three primary components to the system. There's, of course, the imaging systems. There are what we call edge analytics. So there's a component, again, that runs at the edge, completely offline, no internet connection. And then the back end all runs, of course, on the cloud. So there's three components here that really put the system together. So the system itself, in terms of kind of those core components, the imaging systems we talked about, you can use our multispectral systems, which we've talked about a bit. But as I mentioned, we now support a variety of third-party sensors, both RGB sensors and third-party multispectral. We've got some unique capabilities with our sensors, but we also can support some of these other sensors, simple RGB cameras. That's a Phantom drone there, or Mavic drones you may have, so you can run them through the same workflow. We produce kind of a subset of traits, of course, when you don't have that multispectral data, but you can run that data through the same system. We also have partnered with a company called Measure. They have a platform called Measure Ground Control that handles the flight control of the drone, but also a whole back-end system for flight planning, keeping track of your pilots, the missions, who is flying what and when, what data has been collected. So it's a really nice kind of what they call fleet management system to really manage these systems at scale. And then, as I mentioned, we have an edge analytics component. That's the on-site quality checks. You can also run some kind of basic analytics for kind of scouting purposes. And then we have the cloud component on the back end. I'll show some more detailed versions of what this cloud platform does, but that's where the core analytics and statistics happen. Those time histories that we talked about, you can see that in the chart at the bottom. So looking at the trends in those traits over time. And then, of course, we have these external interfaces where you can manually download the data, or we have a variety of APIs in place as well if you want to push that data into their platforms. So a quick look at the platform itself. We really have kind of two primary workflows. We call them emergence data and then post-emergence data. This is a look at some post-emergence data where you can see here we're counting individual corn plants. So you've got an orthomosaic in the background. So we do generate an orthomosaic, even though we don't use it in the analytics. We provide it, kind of for those visualization, kind of that context awareness. And then overlaid on top of that are color-coded plots, based on the metric that we're computing. We have a high-resolution image there on the right where you can see those individual plant detections. And then down in the lower left, we have a histogram showing the distribution of, in this case, plant counts across the entire trial. The other workflow is for later in the season, when you've got more mature plants, you're looking at time histories, as we mentioned. We've got a variety of kind of mature crop statistics and measurements, so looking at stress measurements, NDVI measurements, canopy measurements, plant height measurements. It's a very similar interface. You can manage all of your data collections, all of your trials, some nice visualization and statistic tools. And then, of course, on the back end, as I mentioned, you can export all that data as you see fit. So I know that's a very quick intro, but I'm happy to answer any questions. You can learn more, of course, at our website. Certainly contact us for a demo. We do have a promotion running through the end of the year, so feel free to ask about it as well. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And again, happy to answer any questions.